Hey guys, it's Brandon Woolum hanging out in Nashville today with Dustin of Sanctus Real. How are you, man?
Good, man. How are you?
Yeah, we just get you today because the song we are talking about is a
Yeah.
very personal song to
Yeah.
you that a lot of people can relate to, even if they won't admit it, probably. Talk to us about the meaning behind this new single, The War I'm In, and why now was the time to put these emotions into song form for us to hear, not just you.
Yeah. Which kind of came out of the blue, honestly. It wasn't like a thought out process. About I think now it's last September, so we're almost pushing a year. We found out my dad was in the hospital. He had to have surgery for a hernia that he had, and it was supposed to be outpatient surgery, easy peasy. He was 60, his mid 60s, and Um, so we knew this was happening, and like the day after it happened, I got a call from my brother who lives in Cincinnati. He said, "Hey, just want you to know this happened." They said everything went well, but Dad went back into the hospital with some pain. Well, we found out that he had a hole in his colon,
Mm.
and again, the hospital, said it's probably not a big deal. We'll go and patch it up, and he should be fine. They patched that one up. They find another one. And so it's kind of crazy going back to that, because for the next 4 weeks, we didn't know how many holes they were finding. They were just telling us they think he's going to be okay. And it was slowly getting more and more serious. It wasn't like any moment where it was like, hey, he might be in trouble. The doctors, the surgeon just kept telling us, we think we got it under control. Well, we found out toward the end of the month of August. I think it was August, September of last year. We found out that he had had 9 surgeries
Wow.
within 3 weeks, and they weren't telling us all this stuff. And so there's 5 siblings, and we're kind of spread out across the country. I'm here in Nashville. My brother's in Park City, Utah. The other brother's in Michigan. Um, we just got a call one day that was like, hey, the hospital wants to talk to all of you. And that was like the moment where like, okay, this must be getting pretty serious. And they told us on the phone, they said, this is probably it. Like, there's a chance, but you should get here. Because at this point, they had been telling us not to come because he kept going in and out of surgery and he was going to be okay. And they said, no, you guys, you need to get here. And, if you can be here by a certain time today, that'd be great. We don't want to see visitors until then because he was in another surgery. And so, we're in this state of mind. All of a sudden, we're like, wait, what? What just happened? And so, like, when you find that information out and it's unexpected, you're just kind of like, I think it's natural tendency for human beings to then start to analyze relationship, right? And these things with those you love. And my dad and mom divorced when I was 3. And so I spent most of my life doing the visitation thing, right? Like weekends every 2 weeks. And then it was like every 4 weeks. And then, what I didn't understand as a kid about my dad was, and a lot of people didn't at this time, was the type of social anxiety and things that he dealt with. I mean, he had anxieties that today would probably be diagnosed. But in those days when he was young, it's just, he's just an introvert or just this.
Mm.
But as a kid, I always was like, he never would go out of his way. It was always like he wouldn't come and visit, and he would never do anything that was extra. And he wouldn't come to a lot of games. And I never acted like it bothered me, but internally, many times you build resentment and you build bitterness. What happens is you turn that around, and I think without even realizing it, without even meaning to, you reflect the behavior that hurt you. And so that's kind of what I started doing to my dad. I just kind of reflect that behavior. And I've always believed, and I think this is a big part of the song, I've always believed that Christians love the spiritual stuff. We just eat it up, right? Like charismatic people love charismatic things. Everything is so, hey, God did this, God did that, God did that. But really, scripture teaches so much about self-control and teaches so much about us loving others, right? Me choosing the action, right? Like if bad works, now good works do not save us, but good works reflect Jesus. And so when Christ sets us free, if we're not looking like him, we're not reflecting him. And I believe that with all my heart. I believe if you're a Christian, man, our number one goal is to look like Jesus, not all the other things. Like if we're not doing that, we're not doing the basic 101 of being a believer. And that thought translated to my father that day. I got this call, and I don't know where the idea came from, but I started weeping because I realized that I had tried, probably failed at times, but tried to look like Jesus to everyone else but my own family, right? Like I made attempts, but I don't know if I ever really made attempts to go out of my way to really represent Jesus to my own dad. And that was hard. And it was hard because there was no do-overs. This was it.
Yeah.
Like that moment, that realization that, man, I just failed, and probably the one thing that I'm going to regret more than anything else. And I remember sitting on the porch and my wife coming out, and it's funny because, you know, everything, you lose somebody, there's so much grieving. But for me, the real emotion in that moment wasn't just the grieving of losing. It was the regret from not doing. And I went inside. I couldn't leave the house yet. And I went inside, and honestly, this is the way it works sometimes. Don't always do this, but I just started writing the song. Literally the day that I found this out, I had these thoughts. I went inside and wrote this song, and it was really a song for me of just professing, you know, the anger behind letting my human nature win in a battle that I should have not let it win. And I think the truth of it is, you know what, this was taken out of Romans 7, where Paul says, the things I want to do, I don't. And the things I don't want to do, I find myself doing. And that's the war I'm in, right? And he's literally relating to this idea that we talk about spiritual warfare too much. Like, we're like, oh, the devil's going to do this. And the truth is, we're not fighting the devil most of the time. We're fighting our own instincts. We're fighting our own selfish nature. We're fighting our own sin nature. And we like to blame it on the devil, when in reality, we're sitting here allowing ourselves to be led by our flesh, allowing ourselves to be led by our selfishness, allowing ourselves to give in. And I did that. And the damage that causes, you know, when I can just say in this room right now, if I were to mistreat you, that doesn't stop in this room, right? That keeps going. And so every time that you fail to look like Jesus, there are these repercussions to that, right? My poor behavior is going to lead to you feeling bitterness and angry, which will probably lead to poor behavior. And pretty soon, we live in a pretty messed up world with drama and things all around us. And we are the byproduct of the struggle of the war that's inside of us. And that's what this song honestly is about. It's a very, for me, it was a cry, basically, Liz. Like, I just want, God, I want you to free me from this thing that is constantly there, and it's constantly there for all of us.
Yeah.
There's also grace to it, right? That's the beauty of what Jesus did for us. But if we don't recognize that the battle's within us, we're never going to win that battle. We're never going to be able to love the way that Jesus calls us to love. That was a long answer, I know, but there's a lot to it.
Yeah. This song obviously is about grief, but there in the center of all of it is just surrendering to the Lord. Do you remember that moment that finally clicked, that moment where it switches from kind of, you're still grieving to this day, but it switches over from full on grief to surrender?
I don't know. I'll be honest with you. I don't know if I would ever say the song was from grief as much as regret. Right. Like, and I think if you listen to the song and you didn't know the story, you wouldn't even know there was grief involved. Right. Because I'm not directly relating it to like this sadness that I lost somebody, but it was such a moment of regret, which I don't have a lot of regrets in my life. And so that feeling hit me really hard. And so like, there was a moment in that song for me when I was writing it, there was no Christian music, right? Like Christian music's like, oh, I'm struggling. And then poof, everything's better. Like the secret holy pill of like, okay, I'm good. There was none of that in this song. Like for me, this song was being written out of pure regret, pure sadness. And the surrender came from that too, right? Like this realization, I just can't do it. I think as I get older, I realize that more and more. When you're young, you're like, oh, I'm great at this thing. You know, life is easy. And as you get older, you realize you're not in control of anything except for your actions, what I can do, what I can choose to do. And that is hard. And so in writing this song, it was really more about this feeling of regret versus, especially because I knew that I couldn't go back and change that. And so that surrender had to be like, I can't do this anymore. Like I can't live like this. And so I've got to surrender that will to you. But it's still a war, isn't it? Like we're still struggle. We're still there's still gonna be a day-to-day interaction of who I am and what I want to do, and the battle of fighting fatigue, sickness, real life struggles of trying to look like Jesus when you don't feel good. That's hard. Which is why we have to rely on the grace of God, to get through those moments. And, self-control is one of the most untalked about things in the New Testament. It's talked about all the time. Paul talks about it. It's the way when he's talking to King Agrippa in Acts, and he's explaining the way, the Bible says he explains the way of Jesus and of self-control. And I think for Christians, a lot of times we want the freedom to just be like, no, it's all by grace. It is. But when you get that grace, we are called to look like him. And that's a missing part, I believe, in our culture right now. It's like, are we looking like him? Are we bringing his kingdom to this earth? And that's the battle. That's the war we're in.
Yeah, you kind of touched on it there a little bit in Christian music. It's changing a little bit now. We're starting to hear more of these raw, real stories, but sometimes it's scary when you put out a song like this as a Christian artist where you're exposing regrets and not all positive in your own life.
Yeah.
Do you remember that day where, you've probably written a lot of songs that don't make it, that are personal to you, that you decided this one needs to be heard by other people?
Yeah. This, actually the guys kind of did that for me. I didn't plan on this being a band song. Like I wrote it for myself, and I wrote it not even as like a thinking, oh, this needs an audience. This was one of those moments where you sit down and you use the pen and paper to kind of write the feeling. And, I remember writing it and then thinking like this song means a lot to me. And I wanted to share that with the guys because they're friends. And so before I left to go see my dad, I sent them the song. And a couple of days later, they knew what was happening. And so they didn't respond right away. And it was Chris who said, and on it for the band, we always write together. Like that's one of our things. So I write a lot of songs. Most of the time I don't even think of them as Sanctus Real songs unless the band's there. But that was like one of the times where he was like, we gotta do this. Can this be a Sanctus Real song? So they kind of made that decision. And I was like, yeah, that's great. I think Christian music, right? We can all get controversial if we want to. But the truth of the matter is there's nothing more real than Christianity in the sense of understanding human nature, right? Like Christians should understand human nature better than anybody, right? Why does evil exist in the world? Well, it's the opposite of God. Why did bad things happen? Because we choose our own selfishness versus the kingdom of heaven. We actually have these answers. And the truth of the matter is we should be deeper in our conversations than anybody else. And for some reason, we've made a culture that doesn't want to do that, doesn't want to speak of these things, or doesn't want to challenge because somebody's afraid it will look funny or be heretical or one of these things because somebody will judge it. But the truth is, what is deeper than Jesus? Who can explore things better than somebody who believes in Jesus? Who can have conversations about difficulties in life other than Jesus? And what runs through all of these topics, what runs through this song is not a sense of hopelessness. In fact, what runs through all of our stuff is that despite all of this struggle that we have, that we can even sing about and talk about, there has to be, if you're a believer, there has to be a foundation to it. So where if secular culture can talk about this stuff, it can feel very hopeless because what's underneath it, there's nothing, but our faith is in Jesus and he is our hope. And so like, no matter what topic we're having, if you believe in Jesus, you have this baseline of hope, right? And that's beautiful because now I can talk about anything, understanding that there's a hope to it. So when you talk about suicide and you talk about addiction and you talk about these dark things, we should be the best at those conversations because even though they're hard, we can speak of them understanding that there's hope that goes beyond just the war that we have. And, you know, if that's controversial, whatever, it doesn't matter, right? But it should be like Christian music should be the deepest music there is. And I don't know why the culture decided that we were going to keep it all, you know, glory, hallelujah. And glory, hallelujah is wonderful at times. There's a purpose to all of it. But if we're not trying to have the deepest conversations with what we believe in, then I think we're failing culture in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I think it's changing a lot, especially these past few years. Even labels that like Gaither Music, who were traditionally Southern gospel hymns, they're bringing in albums now that are talking about topics that were once stuck in the church basement.
Right.
They're putting full projects out about recovering from drugs and stuff, something that you never would have saw from some of these labels just 5-6 years ago, really. So
streaming has helped with that, because it used to be the outlet was just radio. And, you know, and radio kind of kept that, like, we need on the airwaves, we don't have time to explain this stuff, we need to keep it right here, which I understand part of that. But that was the premium outlet for your music, right? Like, and so labels would not let you write that stuff because it didn't fit the format. But streaming has really, really helped. I mean, The War I'm In, it's not going to be a radio song. Like, they're not going to play this song.
Yeah.
But it's still going to get a lot of people listening to it because streaming, we have great streaming stuff and we can talk about it, right? Like, so the right people are going to hear it, and that's great. And we can make that choice now. Whereas honestly, 10 years ago, before they were streaming, we'd lose money on the song.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean you don't do it, but it was a way greater challenge. And so those labels weren't going to let you do it because they didn't want to lose money on the song. So I think the freedom of having more outlets has allowed people to go, I can be who I want to be rather than who they want me to be. And I think that's beautiful in a lot of ways. And it's crazy though, because, and I'll say this, and you can cut it if you want to, but not everybody should be having these conversations, right? You have to be careful with these kinds of conversations, because there's this realization when you're young, you think you know everything and you think that you can tell everybody what they should do. When you get old, you realize you know nothing. And to tell somebody what they should do, if they listen to you, could be very dangerous.
Yeah.
Right. And so advice should be guarded, and it shouldn't be given unless you really know the person and you know who they are. And so a lot of times when we start having these conversations, you get people who are who have never went through it, don't know what the pain, don't know the suffering, and you have to be careful with this. And I would say to all the artists, like, write about things that you've experienced, write about things that you've been through, write about things that you actually can have a voice in. And so there is a balance to this. Like, I wouldn't want everybody to just start writing, dark, deep songs, because, the wrong person hears it or the person who's not ready or doesn't understand it, and it can lead you to more dark places. And so everything has to be written in love, not cynicism. Everything must be written from a perspective of saying, what is Jesus? How would Jesus invade this conversation or be a part of, versus what I think about this, right? Because it can be dangerous. You start writing songs about church hurt. You start writing songs. Well, there's a lot of factors to all of these things. It's not just black and white here. This is how it goes. And they have to be written from love. They have to be written from humility. And if they're not, they can cause more danger. So there is a balance to this.
Yeah.
And it goes beyond just, hey, Christians should write these songs. Well, not always.
Yeah, literally just a few hours ago this morning, I had a very similar conversation from the other side with Natalie Lane, who has a new project coming out here in a few weeks.
Yeah.
And that project is based on kind of the opposite of this. I told her, like, we're talking, and she's like, I felt weird because my testimony is not bad. It's not full of a bunch of negativity. I grew up a church kid. So this project is for the church kids who may feel like their testimony isn't enough because we're getting these kind of songs.
Yeah. I love that, by the way. I was hurt.
Yeah.
Until I got older, and then life got harder. But I grew up the same way. I used to say the same thing. Like, I don't have the church celebrates dark testimonies, but what about the people who actually chose to do it? And sometimes it's almost like they get pushed out of the thing. So I get that, and I love that, because I think there's an awareness of who I am, of what I can bring to this conversation. And if you don't have that, you can actually cause more harm than good. And so I think that, and she's by the way, one of the most talented people in Nashville. So that's awesome.
Kind of related to what we were just talking about too. Like, I feel like these real raw songs are giving people who are dealing with mental health issues different ideas and different options. Now they've got artists that they know are dealing with the same stuff. Whereas 10 years ago, you may have just brought that to your pastor and said, here's what's going on. And like you said, not all pastors are perfect for every scenario. Not every pastor has been through drug abuse and anxiety and stuff. So I like that now people are giving other outlets. It's always important to talk to your pastor too, but sometimes you may need professional help too.
Depends on the pastor. Yeah. Not every pastor.
Yeah.
I think there's such a beauty to these conversations. And I think this conversation, this type of thing needs to be had more in the church, but it needs to be had less as a black and white issue thing and more of how do we look like Jesus more in these conversations? Because even the songs about mental health and those things, if you're a Christ follower, and this is not everything's great, but everything has to have this baseline of life may never be easy, but you have hope, right? Like underneath all of this, I've struggled the last year. It's been a tough year. There's been more than just my dad. It's just been a tough year, and I'm beginning to understand what they mean by midlife crisis. And it's not what I'm doing. It's it's those feelings as you get older. And despite all of that, like there is still, I'm a believer, right? And to believe means that I believe in something about Jesus. It's not just like he's just filling me with hope and love all the time. It's that I chose to believe a long time ago, and there's nothing that dissuades me, because honestly, nobody's ever shown me a better path in this world. There's no better path than the kingdom of heaven, righteousness, peace, and joy. All of the things that we look in our world and say, that's bad. Scripture talks about the opposite of that as Jesus, right? Like everything is about righteousness, peace, the fruits of the Spirit. Those are the things that we aspire to. And because there's both good and evil, we see the opposite of that all the time. And then that's, again, we're coming back to the song, because that's the war. Are we reflecting this or are we reflecting that, right? And even though we are also dealing with each other's choices, and that's something I think we forget about a lot of times, right? We suffer a lot because somebody else made a selfish choice. My choices will affect everybody around me. If I make a bad choice, my wife suffers, my kids suffer. And then they'll go, well, God, why did you let this happen? God didn't do anything. I chose that because he gave us the freedom to choose, right? That's why it's such a war. That's why he calls us to reflect him in everything we do. Because when we look like him, man, people will see life as beautiful. When we don't, people see life as, God, why do you let this happen? Well, because he let us have freedom, right? And so I think this conversation is so important, but I think this conversation has to be so tempered in the purpose, the why behind why we'd write those songs, right? We don't just write those songs. We shouldn't be writing hard songs just because nobody else is, or just because it's the cool thing. We should write those songs with the purpose of, how do I let people know that in the darkest moments, there's hope, right? Like, I understand. I empathize. I get it. I have a brother who passed away from substance abuse when I was 24. He was 26. I have another brother who deals with schizophrenia and some psychological issues. A great guy, but like really struggles. I see the struggle and I go, it's not fair, right? Like his choices are different because they're coming through this thing, but God sees that. God's judgment is different because he knows what we're going through. He understands the thing that's happening inside of us. And you can't encapsulate all that in a song, right? Like you can't be like, oh, this fits everybody. We're all this way. No, because everybody's struggle is different. And so if I'm going to write a song that talks about my struggles, I don't want people just to know my struggle. I want people to know why there's hope underneath my struggle, why I can talk about my struggle and be like, yep, I'll never get that back. But I know that God created me to look like him, and I can continue that from this day forward. And I know that he'll be okay. His grace is sufficient, right? So I think the why behind why we write those songs is so important, as much as writing the songs, right? Everything should be written from love and with a purpose of reflecting Jesus no matter what we're doing.
If people have made it this far, they're probably deep into the story. They're like, this is a very deep 3-minute song. I've been watching this long form interview for 30 minutes now. I've learned a lot, but it's going to get deeper because there's more coming. This is just chapter one of, I don't know if we call it a multi-track single now or an EP. I don't know where that line is. There's 3 songs that's going to be in this project, whatever we call it. What can you tell us about these next couple chapters that we're
doing? It's an EP. We've actually, these 2 songs, there's actually been 1 song before this. Steady was technically a part of this. And again, Steady talks about the hope underneath, right? Like no matter what's happening in my life. As a band, you know, this band's been around 30 years, Sanctus Real, and they've changed a lot before me. Like I didn't, a lot of people blamed me. I was like, I didn't do anything. They were already soft, if that's what you want to call it. And I just came into the Christian radio era. I'm in my 11th year now, which is crazy. But I think for the first time, we're going to say the things that we want to say. We're going to say the things that we feel like we have to say. And we're going to write a style that we really love. And I come from more of a folk background. This is not, what's funny is people will be like, are they changing again? No, this is me. This is what I've always been. And the guys love this kind of music. And so we're just kind of going with what we feel is right for the season. But these songs are kind of a story, and we just wanted to say things for this song is not something you'd release if you're trying to be popular, right? Like we just want to say, I think for us, it's been more about the message over the last year. Like, what do we want to say with our songs? And these songs coming out are some of my favorite I've ever been a part of. And so, and it's kind of a story. So this first one, The War I'm In, is kind of the struggle, the regret, the angst between this war that you don't know if you can win. The next one is going to be called Make a Way. It's a lot of fun, but it's really kind of this realization that through it all, like you might be in the desert. I love the way Christians, we have to use this imagery. We don't know how else to do it, right? There's nothing else. I don't know. If anyone else can think of better imagery, then feel free to let me know and I'll write it in. But like use this imagery that's like, you know, you're in the middle of this struggle. And this first line of this song is like, it's hard to see your plan walking on a tightrope, like in the middle of the wasteland. It's kind of this reflection that it's hard to really lay things down and win that battle. But also that hope that I was talking about, right? Like there's always hope. If you believe in Jesus, you have hope. That's a statement with a period. And this song, Make a Way, is this realization that if you believe in Jesus, you have hope. And so it's kind of like the first song is the struggle. The second song is the awareness that God is with you. And then the third song is I like to call the submission stage. You know, it's like, okay, if I'm going to have faith that he's going to make a way, then I can take a breather. Like, and it's called Days Like These. And I'm gonna be honest, I cannot wait for that song to come out. I'm a little sad it's third because it's one of my most favorite songs we've written, and it is very chill, but also very different. And that song, I think, has this line in it. I'll just say this line. It's one of my favorite lines. It basically says, like the ravens fed Elijah in the wilderness, right? Like, you provide all I need on days like these. And it's just this kind of beautiful picture of like, okay, I can trust that even though I'm still in this season, I can just trust. I can relax. I can just believe. And yeah, I think, and they're all, you know, for me, they tell the story of not just mine. I know Chris and Mark it's been just a different year for us. I think God is teaching us something. And, you know, I think all of us have been in this season where it's like we've had to go through these steps. And the songs reflect the steps that we've walked through over the past year and a half. And mine was just exacerbated by, you know, my dad's situation. And so I'm excited to release them because it gives us something to talk about. First 10 years of this, I didn't want to do this kind of stuff. Like I was in ministry for many years, and I sat on a lot of couches and talked to a lot of people. But to get in front of cameras and do it always felt like, oh, you're saying something and you know, everything's got to be perfect and you've got to, and I never wanted to do it because I felt like it was kind of showy, right? Like, and it never felt fully real. And I think this is the first time in my career, if I can call it that that I want to sit on this couch and I want to talk about it, because I feel like our culture is losing some of this realism that comes with looking like Jesus. We're losing some of this. You know, we're celebrating flashy. We're celebrating big things. We're celebrating huge arena things. And the truth of the matter is, the way of Jesus is celebrating little victories, and the way of Jesus is treating people well around you. And the way of Jesus is honestly knowing other people well enough to help them. And see, we don't do that a lot. And when you're in a Christian band and you've got a million fans, you don't have time to get to know people, right? So they come to us after shows and they tell us their story and they want us to give advice. And I'm like, God, I don't know how to do that, because I don't know who this person is. I don't know what their struggle really is. I don't know what their motives are. I don't know what to tell them.
And like you talked about earlier, you don't want to accidentally give them the wrong advice, because they're going to follow it.
Right. There's a lot of weight on this. And I think we as people who get on stage have to be aware of this. Like, our words have power, good and bad. And sometimes we throw advice out there and it hurts people. We don't know who they are or why they're talking about it. One of my favorite verses, and I know we've gone a long time, but one of my favorite verses it's in scripture is in John 2. And it's so random. And people are always like, how's that one of your favorite verses? And I think it's because it shows the struggle that we're in so much. And it's very quick. Jesus is just starting his ministry. He changed water into wine. He starts doing these things and people want to make him king. So at the end of John 2, it's like they want to make him king because of all these amazing things he's doing. And the Bible says, but Jesus would not trust them. He would not entrust his heart to them, because he knows what's inside man. That is deep, by the way. All these people are loving him, showering praise on him, all of this stuff. And the Bible goes out of its way to say, yeah, but he didn't trust any of them, because he knew what was in all of their hearts. And I've always thought, when I started doing this for a living, criticism is hard, but praise is harder, right? And it's really hard when you're in ministry and everybody acts like you know what you're talking about. I hate to break this to everybody. This could be controversial, but I've been around a lot of pastors. Most of us don't know what we're talking about. Like, we can teach the Bible, but the real life situations are not that easy, right? And then we struggle with our own things, and it's really hard. And many times we're playing a role rather than loving people every single day, right? Every day is gritty, dirty, it's hard. Sometimes it's beautiful, and sometimes it's not hard. There are seasons where it's easy, right? That's the God seasons. And because our culture is telling us that a pastor looks like this, or an artist looks like this, or this person's supposed to look like this, we end up playing roles rather than being real followers, right? Real followers of Jesus. And how hard is it for me or a pastor to say, you know what, I don't know. I don't know what you should do. I don't know what the right thing is.
Yeah.
Because honestly, it all depends on your motive, and only you know that motive, right? Like, and so, but that's true Christianity. That's true being a true believer, right? Like, God, give me the wisdom to actually say what needs to be said rather than the role that I'm trying to fulfill. And I hope to do that in song. Like, even our songs, I don't know what's going to fix everybody. Like, this song, can I tell one more story? Is that we have time for?
We got this room for 2 hours, so we got another hour or
so. There's a really cool story to this song that I don't think we've told. We've alluded to it. But the drumming on this song, which is very light, very simple, is actually Steve Ferrone. I think it's Ferrone, might be Ferrone. Which I hope he didn't see that, because
if he makes it this far, he really is interested.
Well, he might be, because he is actually the drummer for Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers.
Oh, wow.
For many years. And he's played with everybody. Chris Roman, our guitar player, grew up as a huge Tom Petty fan. And somehow, through a connection, we don't know him, through a connection, this song got into Steve's hands.
Huh.
And here's why I bring this up, because it's really cool. Number one, it's really cool to have him playing on this song. Mark was more than happy to let him play on this song. But here's where it got really cool. He got his hand on these songs. A connection said, "Hey, this guy's the guitarist is a really big fan, and I don't even know how it happened. Honestly, this all was secondhand to me. This happened before I even heard it. He got the song and he said, sent us a text back, a long text. And he said, I want you all to know that was after a concert. I got this text. I went back and I lit up a cigar. He said, I'll sit on the back and I turned the song on. And he said, I had just lost a friend. And he said, this song made me feel like God really does care. Now, I thought that was interesting because if you listen to the song, it doesn't talk about grief.
Yeah.
It doesn't talk about losing somebody. But wherever he was, the same spirit that I was going through, the same feeling that I had, this song hit him in the exact same way, which I thought was amazing because I'm like, this song is not a song of grief. Like, unless you understand or you've heard this video, this story, it's not a song of grief. But that was his response. And he was like, I would love to play on this song. And so it was such a unique thing for me because I was like, how did this song, which is about regret and surrender, bring peace to his grieving? And he sent it to the guy's wife and she said same thing. And I'm like, it's amazing that God is using the song for people that are grieving when it really wasn't meant to appease grieving. But that's the way God works. I don't think I wrote this song thinking to fix anyone. you know, like I wasn't writing this to be like, hey, everyone, listen to this, you'll feel better. No, in fact, I thought it might make people feel worse. So it's amazing to see what God can do with stuff you do. So
yeah, a lot of people watching this maybe in their own season of grief right now, or if they're not, they're going to deal with this at some point in life. Because if you don't, that's bad. That means you're the one that people are grieving over. But a lot of times as Christians, we can feel pressure to move from grief to praise pretty quickly. Yeah. What would you say to that person who's maybe struggling with that and juggling that right now to maybe just grieve a little longer?
Yeah. Well, I think grief is one of the hardest things, you know, even Bible says, blessed are those who mourn, right? I think grief can best be described in a lot of ways that it comes in waves. And so, you know, even after this, even after my dad passed away, I think there were moments where I thought I was fine. And then something would hit me. And I think for a lot of people, they don't realize that that's what grief does. I remember losing my brother, and that hit, you know, I was young, and that hit so hard. Like you just go through these trenches and then hills and then trenches. And I think that the thing that a lot of people don't realize is, and I think it's the same way with everything in life. We say a word like grief, or we say a word like I'm good, all these things. And it's like, that's not the way life works, right? Like we go up and down all the time. That's just who we are. We might feel grief tomorrow or today and feel good tonight. Like it's just our emotion do this. And I think a lot of times people are trying to judge themselves based on like those words rather than recognizing that this is a process, you know? And I don't, you know, we use the word praise. I mean, most of what our worship really is a recognition of who God is, right? So even in the darkest of morning, I'm aware that I have a foundation that's not going to go away. That's worship, right? Like there doesn't have to be, you don't have to get up and dance and shake your hands, which I grew up charismatic. And so that's what it would be like. I mean, yeah, it's great. If that's who you are and what you want to do, that's not on me at all. You do it. But if you feel pressured to do it because your culture says, hey, you can't be down, well, you can't help that, right? And then what ends up happening is you start feeling guilty about the fact that you are still grieving, which only makes it worse. And that's how, you know, that's how people get broken and people get hurt, is they are not allowed to go through the process. But then on the flip side of that, there's nuance of this. Some people like the attention that grieving gives them.
True.
Which is why I always talk about the motive. Like I can't judge this because I don't know the motive. Yeah. And so to that person, I would say, you know, like if you are a believer, you have to be trending toward hope, right? Like because that's just who we are, right? And so that foundation is such a huge piece. And it's I read this morning Jesus in the Gospels talking about the kingdom, and he said, I bring you peace and a sound mind. That's what Jesus said. I'm like, that is such a deep statement for our lives, right? Yes, lots of stuff are going on. Yes, you might be busy. Yes, you might be in grief. And yet Jesus said, believe in me and I bring you peace and a sound mind, right? Like you can grieve with hope, as Paul says, right? We grieve differently, right? We grieve with hope. Whereas people who don't believe in Jesus, they grieve. We have a foundation that nobody else has. That's why as Christians, we can talk about the deepest stuff, the hardest stuff, but we can talk about it with hope, whereas most people can't. And we should be having these conversations, and we should be having the deep conversations, and we shouldn't be afraid of saying, addiction's hard, life is hard. People are covering up, they're covering up their self-worth or lack of self-worth with things that they don't understand that God breathed life into them, and that's all they need. And so they're trying to be something special in this world, but there's 7 billion of us.
Yeah.
We're not special.
Yeah.
We're just not. Like, and the truth is, we're only special because we're made in his image. And that's where all our self-worth lies. Not in singing, not in playing, not in talking, not in being on stage. All of our self-worth comes from the fact that we have the spark of the divine inside of us, right? And so when we talk about deep stuff, we should be talking about deep stuff in a way that reflects that divinity, right? That we have such a foundation of hope. And we should be doing it from a place of love all the time. Is what I'm saying helping? Is it pushing people toward the way of Jesus? Or is it pushing people away from hope? And I think those questions are what the Christian music world should be pondering more than anything else. Why am I doing it?
Yeah.
You can do that with everything in life, and you might be amazed at the war we're in.
Yeah. And we got to remember that we all need help sometimes, especially in these deep valleys, especially as Christians. Sometimes it feels like that I'll pray for you might be just the Christian brush off.
Yeah.
You can't just say that. Prayers are needed, but sometimes actions are needed too. So we got to remember that as Christians too.
Yeah.
When are we going to see this all pieced together? We've got a couple songs out there now, still 2 more to come.
Yeah.
When does this whole collection finally come into full form?
Because of the modern world, right? The best way to release songs is to release them about every 6 weeks. And I can explain that. Your listeners might be interested in why that is the case, is because when you release a song every 6 weeks, it gives streaming services the opportunity to put them on playlists. And so if you have a song, you release it, they put it on a good playlist so more people will hear it. They don't want you coming out with a brand new one because they don't want to have to remove one and leave it.
And they want those pre-saves too.
And they want the pre-saves. So a lot of the strategy nowadays is to release a song or two every month and a half. And then those are all part of one project. And so before the end of the year, these 2 songs will be out, the next 2. And then the plan is, now in our world, things change rapidly. Yeah. So, but the plan is to have 3 songs out by the beginning of the next year. And of course, we just released a song that I love too, with Jason Gray, called The Land of the Living, which was a song he wrote 3 years ago. And I think it's an absolutely beautiful song. It talks a lot about what we've talked about today. And he asked us if we would sing on it with him. And so that just came out last Friday. So we have a lot of music coming out. So by the end of the year, we should have four songs out. This EP will be, I believe there's 6 total. And so there's another one after that one.
Wow.
So, and then I think we're going to release one more. We'll see what happens. We have a lot of songs that we love. And honestly, the messaging of these songs, we want to get right. But I don't know how much Sanctus Real is going to tour as much anymore because we have a lot of kids and it's getting harder, getting older. And we'll still be out there, but probably not nearly as much as we were. But we do love to write and release songs. And so we have a lot of songs that we have already done and kind of tucked away. And we hope to just keep releasing music. So, but at least 4 by January.
Yeah, well, a couple of those songs already out there, more coming throughout the year. Keep streaming them. That way they can keep putting out music and not have to leave their families to go pay the bills.